Years with Mickey. Not only did I read Mickey Mouse as a child, I ended up becoming Mickey's writer in spite of myself. Writing Mickey Mouse stories for Disney and even writing the Mickey Mouse syndicated comic strip, which used to be, I think, one of the more popular comic strips in the world until Mickey was eventually eclipsed by other more contemporary comics. Poor Mickey Mouse, his readership dropped way down in the 80s and 90s. And even though I wrote Mickey up into the 90s, sadly the strip was eventually canceled by King Features. But anyway, I'm going to be showing you some slides essentially about my years with Mickey at the Walt Disney Studio. So let's move on. Next. Okay, there's Uncle Walt. And the one thing I can say about Disney Studio when I arrived there, it was a much smaller company than the company you know today. It was almost like being part of a family. And when you worked for Disney, you really did work for Walt Disney. He ran everything. But the good part was, if you got a job at Disney, back in those days, you can pretty much figure you'd be there for the rest of your career. It was indeed a lifetime job. Next slide. And there's a favorite place of mine. That's the original animation building in Burbank. Employees used to indeed have lunch on the lawn right outside the building. And the old maestro would walk around at lunchtime and say, "How you doing?" I mean, how about that? Let's see the boss walking around. No assistants, no handlers, no entourage. Walt pretty much walked around by himself and said, "How's it going?" Next. At the time I arrived at Disney, the Mickey Mouse Club was still in production. And so it was not unusual to see the kids playing around the lot, going to school, because they actually did attend school right on the Disney lot and worked right on the Disney lot in stage one where they filmed the Mickey Mouse Club. Next. Here's a shot of Walt with one of my favorite composers. That's Ollie Wallace. Oliver Wallace goes way back to the days of silent films where he played an organ in the movie theaters back before they had sound. But Ollie Wallace composed a lot of the film scores for Disney films you heard over the years, especially the films in the 40s and 50s. Next. Here's a shot of Walt with the Mouseketeers. They really did regard Walt Disney as good old Uncle Walt, and those kids were just like part of the Disney family. Next. I started drawing cartoons about the old maestro early on because I just found him a fascinating character. One of the things that distinguished Walt Disney was he always announced his arrival when he entered one of the wings of the animation building by a loud cough. Now some say that cough came from his cigarette habit, because Walt smoked all of his life. But he had this loud cough. But many said the cough was a warning sign that man was in the forest. So. Next. Another gag I drew. This is actually based on a real incident. One of the writers was pitching a feature film idea to Walt Disney, and Walt wasn't happy with what he saw. So one of the things that distinguished Walt Disney was he didn't bawl you out or chew you out in person. If he wasn't happy with what you'd done, he'd pretty much just get up and walk out of the room and let you figure it out. Next. One of the things about working for Walt was you certainly didn't want to incur his wrath, although he wasn't really a wrathful guy. He's not going to bawl you out. But I would often do this gag because I said the story artists would want to blame each other if something didn't work or if something went wrong. So another one of my Walt gags. Next. When I arrived at Disney for the first time, they had built a new soundstage on the back lot. They called it Stage 3, and it had a water tank inside. This was because they were going to film a movie